Hello. All right, we are doing Module 6, Lesson 4 problem set today. And you guys are going to be constructing your own bar graphs to start off with. So it says on number 1, the chart below shows the number of magazines sold by each student. So we have Ben, Rachel, Jeff, Stanley, Debbie, and we have the number of magazines they have sold. And right away, one of the things that pops out at me is, ooh, these numbers are working in the hundreds, right? So when I go to think about designing this graph down here, I'm certainly not going to draw 600 tick marks to get up to Debbie's magazines sold number. So it says to use the chart to draw a bar graph below and create an appropriate scale for the graph. So this appropriate scale language is telling you need to kind of pull your attention to this y-axis line here and think, what would make the most sense for these intervals? Now, all of these numbers are in the hundreds. So I'm thinking I probably should start there. And if I look at the number of tick marks that they've provided, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And my highest number of magazines sold is 600. So it makes sense to go ahead and label each of these tick marks in intervals of 100, right? And I want the 600 to be up at the top because that's the greatest amount of magazines sold. So when you're designing a bar graph or a graph, it's okay to overshoot your highest amount. So had there been another tick mark up here and putting a 700 there, that's fine. But what you can't do is undershoot, right? You can't stop it at 500 and then have your bar graph flying off at the top. All right, now we also have to identify the students because we have a title here, student. They didn't give us a lot of room here to put the names, but we need to. So our bar graph is going to be going up, right? We're going to pull across the X and we're going to pull up to the amount on the Y. So my first student is Ben. I think I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I can fit all of these people in here. Now you don't want your bars to attach, meaning like they wouldn't share a line, Ben and Rachel. Those are actually called histograms. And so those are, or not histogram, a histograph, sorry. And those are a different type of graph, histograph. And then we have Debbie. So we do need to have spacing between our bars. So Ben has 300, and you don't have to use a ruler, but I'm going to at least make my top point here, and then I'll freehand the bar going down, but there's Ben, right? He has 300. Rachel has 250, so 250 is going to be more in between my 300 and my 200, and Rachel is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line. Maybe I shouldn't have freehanded. That is not a very straight bar over here. Maybe I'll clean that up just a little bit. That's a little better. All right, here's Rachel. And then we have Jeff had 100. Jeff was not our highest seller, was he? All right, so here's Jeff. And you want to keep your bars, about the same width. Again, we are freehanding with a little bit of straight edge work if you want to, or you can get very precise on this. What you do want to be on the sides, it meant. But you do really want to be precise on where these bars stop, right? Because the whole idea is to be able to visually see who sold what. All right, so he is at 450, and then Debbie was our big seller. So if I pull this across, get a little more straight. Debbie is right there, and her bar graph pull down here. All right, so here we have our sellers. Ooh, that one's a little wonky. Here we have our sellers and the amounts that they sold. Explain why you chose the scale for the graph. So remember, the scale is the interval jumps that you decided. And we decided to skip into intervals, skip by intervals of 100. And it made sense to do that because everyone sold something within a number in the hundreds. So I choose 100. Let's say I chose intervals of 100. Because everyone sold 100 or more magazines. Now, if somebody had sold 50, this really still could have worked, right? We could have put a little, halfway tick mark there to pull them across, and it still would have made sense. And we have some that have sold in the 50s up above, which is a nice, easy halfway point to identify if you're working in hundreds. How many fewer magazines did Debbie sell than Ben and Stanley combined? So Ben and Stanley, we would find their amounts. And again, if we're combining something and then finding the difference, we're going to cluster that combination first because it's going to create a higher amount if we're finding a fewer type of answer at the end. So we had Ben had 300 and Stanley had 450. And then we're going to subtract Debbie because the question is, how many fewer magazines did Debbie sell than these two combined? So 300 plus 450 is 750 minus our 600 leaves us 150 less. Okay. How many more magazines did Debbie and Jeff sell than Ben and Rachel? So how many more magazines? This is telling us that they're going to have a bigger amount than Ben and Rachel. Okay, so we're going to add these two first. Then we're going to subtract whatever these two total. So a nice way to organize this again is with parenthesis work. So if I do Debbie, she was 600 plus Jeff, because it's an and, right? So that is telling us that they want those two amounts together. How many more magazines tells us we want to find a difference than Ben and Rachel, right? And means they want us to combine Ben, which was 300, and Rachel, which was 250. All right, so now we can work this down. We have 700 minus 550. And here, just be on the safe side because with all these zeros, right, this is an easy place to be off in a specific place value. So here we go. And I need to regroup here. And I have 150 more. They sold 150 more than Ben and Rachel. Alrighty, let's move on. So next up, we have the bar graph shows the number of visitors to a carnival from Monday through Friday. Now, looking at our graph, get the lay of the land, right? We got our carnival visitors as our title. We have the number of visitors working up the y-axis, and then the days of the week working along the x-axis. This one is really just focusing on